All right. We're right here. Another episode. Thanks to anybody that's gonna be tapping in to watch this. You know, with all the crazy stuff that's going on right now, we wanted to take the time and bring somebody that understands the law a little bit better than us or us regular folks and stuff. So today we have a special guest, Denisse Gastélum. Thank you for coming
Thank you
and
for
welcome.
having
Yeah,
me.
welcome to the West Factory. You can see our little humble place right here and stuff.
Yeah. Nice and cozy. A little cold, but it's nice and cozy. I
Yeah, it's
appreciate
cold
it.
because of the warehouse, huh? So we put the heater on. It won't happen. It won't make a difference for sure and stuff. But yeah, why don't you take your time and introduce yourself here?
All right. Thank you, Tony, for having me, and good morning,
You
everyone.
can move
Buenos
the mic
dias.
closer to you.
Okay,
Yeah.
sounds
Yeah.
good. Así está bien?
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right, sounds good. Good morning, everyone. Buenos dias. As Tony mentioned, my name is Denisse Gastélum, and I am very, very, very proud civil rights attorney here in Los Angeles. I was born in East Los Angeles, arguably a good 30 minutes from here, so I wouldn't even say the backyard. We're in Torrance right now,
Mm-hmm.
but I was born in East Los Angeles to a beautiful immigrant family from Sinaloa and Chihuahua. Um, I have we family of four siblings, two beautiful parents. My father unfortunately passed away a
I'm
good
sorry to hear.
17, 18
Mm-hmm.
years ago, but my mother is still alive and very proud. Mexicana, we're all very proud.
Mm-hmm.
Sinaloenses. She's from Chihuahua, but she claims Sinaloa
Oh
a
yeah,
lot
yeah,
more.
because
Yeah,
her
so
husband and
yeah,
stuff. Yeah,
and
yeah,
smart
cool.
woman también,
Oh, nice, nice. Yeah.
um, yeah, so like I said, yeah, I'm a civil rights attorney. I've been doing this work for about I've been in the game for about 15 years. I actually started at Johnny Cochran's firm. That was my introduction to police misconduct. I remember to this day, the very first day that I went to work at Johnny Cochran's firm as a law clerk,
Yeah.
they had me sit in on the deposition of a pathologist. And pathologist is basically the folks who conduct the autopsies.
Oh, cool, cool.
Um, and
They see
that
some scary stuff, you know?
very scary stuff and
Mm-hmm.
very sad stuff. And I think
Mm.
literally it was day one, and I think I don't know, maybe like 24 years old, give or take, 24, 25 years old. And I sat in during this deposition, and the autopsy was of a 16-year-old boy who, for all intents and purposes, had his head blown off
Oh man.
by an
Mm.
off-duty officer who, at 2 o'clock in the morning, just decided that some Middle Eastern kids outside of his apartment were too loud.
Oh
Right?
man.
It was like the equivalent of the Trayvon Martin case, if you will. And I remember sitting there with the parents, mind you, with these photographs being passed around, such a senseless murder, such a senseless, of course, abuse of power by that off-duty
Yeah,
officer,
yeah,
and it shook me, right?
yeah. And this is at a young age, right?
Young
Like you're
age,
barely getting started
yeah,
in your
barely
career
getting
and stuff,
started in
right?
my
Oh wow.
career,
Yeah.
and I remember thinking that it was really righteous work and that it was really great work. Um, as the years went on, I do specialize in police shootings and then in jail death cases. And what's interesting is, as much as I do appreciate my work, particularly the police shooting cases, I become, I don't, I always tell the families when they call me, you know, unfortunately, but fortunately,
Mm-hmm.
I become an expert in jail death work up and down the state in California, not just your county jails or your temporary holding facilities, for example, like a local jail station,
Yeah.
but prisons as well. And I think I gave a talk, like arguably a couple months ago in San Francisco, and I remember telling folks, and it was a realization I myself had that I love the work that I do, and I do feel like it's actually my purpose. And I'm this, 39-year-old civil rights attorney.
Mm-hmm.
I remember thinking that if at the age of 5, somebody had walked up to me and they're like, "Hey, Denisita, you're gonna be this attorney who specializes in deaths that occur in jails," I'd be like, "What?
Oh yeah,
Like
yeah.
how did would I get there?"
And that's something I was curious about is how'd you get into that?
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, and again, certainly Johnny Cochran's firm introducing me to what's known as police misconduct, and I feel like police misconduct. It's not just misconduct by police officers.
Sure.
It essentially means when law enforcement agencies, whether it be police departments or sheriff's departments, police officers, sheriff's deputies, correctional officers, custody folks, you get it. Anybody that belongs to law enforcement, when they abuse their power and violate people's rights by abusing them neglecting them. And it does, again, doesn't have to be violence. It could just be
Sure.
straight up ignoring something, a medical condition, and that person dies, as an example, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it could be as violent as shooting somebody in the back of the head 3 times. Does that make sense? It's
Yeah.
this
Okay.
range
Yeah.
of misconduct.
Mm-hmm.
Um, anyway, so again, John, at the Cochrane firm, I was introduced to that, and I got really good at doing the work. And to be honest with you, my first 3 years, I did of actually being a practicing attorney because I was there as a law clerk.
Yeah. Yeah. Getting started, right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I graduated during the recession, and I must have applied to like 20 civil rights firms, who, mind you, some of them are the goats now
Oh, okay.
and are my mentors now.
Sure. Sure.
And they're like, man, we should have hired you.
Oh man.
But point
yeah.
is, it was a recession, so
Nobody was hiring and stuff.
and then the counties weren't paying,
Yeah,
right? Or
mhm.
whatever, settling. Point is, I ended up taking a gig at a private defense firm doing sheriff's department work.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, so, and I get a lot of, I get a lot of shit for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? I get a lot of shit for it.
Yeah.
But I
Because you
always,
defend the sheriffs at this
for
point,
for
right?
my first 3 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
my
yeah.
first 3 years. I mean,
Mhm.
again, anyway.
Sure.
And I tell people all the time, because obviously when I introduce myself to the families who hire me, I do tell them of that, but I'm always like, it's that intel that makes me a very, very, very effective civil
Mhm.
rights attorney, because I know you get it, the angles on the other side.
Yeah.
Point is, after doing that work for about 3 years, I got recruited by an amazing Latino civil rights attorney who trained me and mentored me for a good 7 years until I hung my shingle. I hung my shingle in 2022.
What's a shingle?
Basically, you hang your shingle like, ya no eres un esclavo, basically.
You're like an attorney now.
No, I started my own law firm.
Oh,
It's
okay.
like a form of
Nice. Yeah,
speech.
yeah.
It's a form-
Okay.
like,
Your shingle, huh?
Yeah. So when, I don't know what you did before owning this warehouse, but as an
Mhm.
example, when you decided to open up this warehouse and open up West Factory,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
hung your shingle, right? You're
Yeah,
like, I'm not going
okay.
to work for the man anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm my own boss now.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
for sure.
Yeah,
Cool,
yeah.
cool. That's
So-
a good feeling too, I bet, right?
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah. Especially in such a competitive environment like in lawyers, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, there's different fields of lawyers, but it's a very competitive environment, I would think too,
It's
right?
very competitive,
Mhm.
Extremely competitive, and it doesn't dawn out, I'm a woman,
Mhm.
all right? Y soy Latina, y soy Mexicana,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and I have to compete
Mhm.
for cases.
Okay.
And the beauty is, technically I have to compete, but thankfully to God, families choose me a lot,
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah.
right? And it's a very sacred thing, I think, because I always think you actually don't want me as your lawyer, because if I'm your lawyer, that means something horrific happened to your loved
Mm.
one,
Yeah, yeah.
or to you, but usually it's your loved one,
Sure.
and you lost your loved one.
Mhm.
That's why you're meeting with me.
That kind of, yeah, it's kind of like a downer already and stuff, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But and I've expressed this actually a couple times, and I believe it. I always think, like, I pinch myself sometimes, like, damn, people on their darkest day come to me. They trust me with their case. They trust me to do good by their loved one who's either killed by the police or who's murdered in jail.
Like horrific stuff for
Yeah,
sure, then, right?
horrific stuff.
Yeah.
They come to me. I go and then, kick ass for 2 years,
Mhm.
right? Litigating the case.
Yeah, it takes a while, right? And
Yeah.
I would assume the government
Oh,
it throws everything at it to try and delay it, right?
Yeah. It's no, it's a fight from the get.
Oh,
It's
man.
a fight from the get,
Yeah.
and
And to even get a judge to see a case, is it tough?
yeah,
Right? Because you
yeah.
have to have a court actually say, oh, okay, this is a case that we have
Right.
to, right?
Right.
Mhm.
And then you end up holding the individuals accountable, and then you get paid very well.
Mm-hmm.
And I always say, man, this is probably what Kobe Bryant felt like.
Oh, really?
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you love the work. It's difficult work, but it's righteous work. And then on top of that, you make a living.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's
Well compensated and
yeah.
you're doing a good deed. So that makes a lot of sense. That must be great.
Yeah.
I think a good feeling for you, you know?
Yeah.
It's
No.
not like us, how do you say, because I think a lot of these folks gotta get held accountable.
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem because there's a lot of good officers
Yeah.
for sure,
Yeah.
right? That are
Good
making a
apples, as
living
they call
too,
'em.
right?
Yeah,
Good
yeah,
apples, right?
yeah.
That are doing their job and then they just want to keep the community peaceful and I met officers that would know my name, right?
Right.
And then they wouldn't just harass me all the time, right?
Yeah.
They would just know like, oh, I already know this guy. But I mean, if I did something bad, they would arrest you, right?
Right.
Like they're just trying to do their job, but they're also trying to be part of the community in a way. But
Yeah.
I've met the guys that are not, that they think they're like superheroes or something, you know,
Right.
right? And
Right.
come in gun ho, everybody's a criminal right here and
Mm-hmm.
all that, right? You know?
That good old cowboy mentality, as they
Yeah,
say.
yeah.
And you hear that a lot, right? Like, oh well, there's the good apples,
Mhm.
and I believe that,
Mhm.
right? And I've come across many good apples,
Sure.
and a lot of my strategy with like when I take on cases, and again, I probably say 30% of my work is police shootings, and then maybe the other 50% are jail death cases, and then the other 20% is like sex abuse, which
Oh, okay.
we'll talk about in just a
Yeah,
bit
yeah.
here. For example, female detainees being sexually abused by correctional officers,
Mm.
or women being raped by police officers.
Oh, that
Right?
happens a lot, huh? Huh?
It does.
Yeah. Wow.
It does.
Yeah.
Um,
And I
I,
think, and I hate to say, because I can never put myself in a position like that, but from what I've seen on TV, women that get raped tend not to want to say anything,
yeah.
too, right?
And that's kind of what I
Can you
was
speak
going.
more into the mic?
Oh, by
Sorry,
all
and
means.
stuff. Yeah, yeah.
No, 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 no. Yo
Mhm.
aquí bien a gusto,
Yeah, I
ando
can see the
contigo.
levels right here. That's
Yeah.
better. That's better. Yeah,
No,
yeah.
you're good. Um, and that's kind of what I was gonna say. That ultimately, sex abuse happens a lot, especially in correctional facilities.
Mm-hmm.
You do see some instances of police officers sexually abusing or sexually assaulting women, but oftentimes, a lot of folks don't come forward. I mean, you kind of mentioned that as well.
Yeah.
Or when they do come forward, they don't want their names out there.
Oh, okay. And
Does
that's
that
hard
make
to
sense?
build the case around,
Yeah,
right?
and they don't want, and I get that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is a horrific thing that happened to you,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, you've hired an attorney to go and, I don't know, correct the wrong. I don't even know how to articulate that.
Sure.
The last thing you want is you get it, your name or your face up on the news, and I
Yeah.
think that's why we don't see that much.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas before, think about police shootings. Before cell phones, people
was
didn't
hard to
really
prove that.
exactly,
Yeah.
or you didn't really hear too much about police shootings
Mm-hmm.
or too much about police brutality. But once cell phones, you're like, boom, and then, I remember my mom even making a comment maybe like 10 years ago, like, ¿cómo se están poniendo gruesos esos policías? Ya andan matando mucha. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
it's not
No.
que ahora están matando mucha
Sure.
gente, es que tenemos. I'm over here speaking Spanish.
Yeah, no.
That
I'm sure our audience could gather both and stuff, you know?
yeah. It's that we have these mechanisms in place to let the communities know, the public know what's going on, right? Anyway, so yeah, that's just a little bit of what I do. You mentioned specifically like jail death, some of the
Yeah.
jail death work that I do.
Actually, and to get a little bit backtrack to that, I
Yeah.
also come from immigrant parents as well too, and my dad was mostly in jail all my childhood and stuff, you know. So I have 5 siblings, and we kind of grew up with my mom doing the best she can and stuff, you know. And it was I would say easier back then from my perspective. I guess my mom might disagree, so I don't know. But it's a trip to see the struggles that our parents go through, right?
Yeah.
And then to give us the opportunity to become somebody and stuff. So I think that's actually pretty dope too. But going back, yeah, like, so first, like when the case happens, how does somebody get a hold of you? Kind of like say I would try and look for a criminal attorney,
Yeah.
right?
And they do.
Okay.
Which is so interesting. A lot of folks who, they Google. I don't even understand why. I mean, I guess I could understand it. They'll Google like criminal attorney or something to that effect. But, thankfully to God, I've been successful doing what I do. Meaning, usually when people look, I mean, this is what I hear. I've
Sure.
never actually even tried it. I should try it.
To
But
Google yourself? No, don't do it. No.
No. I know. No. When people Google, for example, this is what I've understood from some of the folks I've called me, like jail death case or jail death attorney. My name comes up a lot.
okay,
And
cool.
I've been in the
Yeah.
news. I do a lot of press conferences around the work that I do. Or I've had a lot of, thankfully to God, because I bust my ass,
Yeah, nice.
settlements that were historic throughout California, specifically for jail deaths.
Oh, okay.
And I think that kind of helps. I mean, everything's Googleable now, right?
Sure.
Truly.
Yeah.
a few last month actually, I had a federal judge refer a family to me,
Oh wow. Yeah,
and
yeah.
I don't actually know which federal judge it was,
Mm-hmm.
but the family went to them. I don't even know what the connection was, and they're like, "Hey, this happened to my loved one. Who should we go with?" And they got sent my way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just interesting how that happens. Like I don't pay for marketing at all.
No, that's what I was gonna ask you now with Google.
Yeah.
If you do the SEO type things and all
Right.
that stuff, where your name pops up when they look for any word with attorney, which is what people do right now, right? That's
Right.
why you have your top 3 sponsored links or
Yeah.
something when you Google something. But
Yeah. Or all the commercials. I mean, you yeah, anyway, a lot
yeah,
of commercials. I've heard of my colleagues who don't do civil rights work.
okay.
They spend like 100K a month or something like
Oh
that
man,
doing
yeah,
marketing. So thankfully to
yeah,
God, I don't have to do that. But my point is, families somehow find me, whether it's on online
yeah. Mm-hmm.
or perhaps other attorneys referring them, like, hey, I'm a criminal law attorney.
Yeah.
I don't do this work, but go to Miss Gastélum as
Oh,
an
okay.
example.
That's why it's good to have colleagues, I guess, right, in different fields too and
Yeah.
stuff, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
totally.
Mm-hmm.
I for sure have this, thankfully to God, a pretty big network: immigration attorneys, civil rights attorneys, of course,
Sure.
criminal attorneys, personal injury, like car accident attorneys,
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah.
everything
Mm-hmm.
that's important. But anyway, so that's usually how the clients will find me.
Okay.
Um, and they usually find me, mind you, I'd say 90% of the time, like within a week of their loved one passing away. I do a lot of work with Colin Kaepernick.
Mm-hmm.
The,
Oh, okay.
yeah, the
Yeah, yeah.
former
The
NFL player.
former 49. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
he stood up for what he believed
He
in,
sure
huh?
did.
Put
He
his
sure
career and everything on the line and
no,
stuff, man.
he did. But he started this wonderful organization that's called Know Your Rights
Yeah.
Camp,
Mm-hmm.
and they do free autopsies.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's called independent autopsies because in California, when people die in jail or, for example, police shootings, you can't tell the coroner's office, hey, don't touch my loved one. I'm going to go pick up the body now.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Sure.
And sometimes you want to do that
Mm-hmm.
because,
You don't know.
exactly.
Yeah.
You want to inspect the body.
Sure.
You want to hire the pathologist, right? But anyway, in California, they don't allow that. The coroners have to conduct the first autopsy. So I work with Kaepernick's organization. We'll get the body. And even shootings, I do that as well because I want to see from firsthand where the bullet entries came from.
Oh, okay.
As an example, where they shot in the back,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's important.
They weren't a threat if they were
Yeah,
shot in the back
exactly.
or
They were
something, right?
fleeing, things
Mm-hmm.
like that. Or even looking at trajectories. Is the trajectory downward, meaning the person was probably falling at the moment of getting shot,
Mm-hmm.
and that goes to were they actually a threat or not. My jail death work, I always do a second autopsy because
Mm-hmm.
you know the sheriff's department, as an example, will issue a press release saying like, oh, this individual died of natural causes or no foul play suspected.
Mm-hmm.
And then my pathologist meets with me after the second autopsy that I've obviously organized for my family. And they're like, blunt force trauma to the chest, blunt force trauma to the brain, blunt.
Oh, man, yeah.
Does
Yeah.
that make sense? Treated like a freaking pinata by who knows whom, right?
Oh, okay.
And hence, does that make sense? The
Yeah.
importance of why I always do these autopsies. Afterwards, of course, we'll begin what's called litigation, right? I don't know if you want me to go a little bit over the constitutional rights that might be implicated, or is that a
Yeah,
little
sure.
too?
No, let's
okay.
let's try that out. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
All right.
I think it's a good episode because we want to school our people, and I don't want to say school is the bad word, but like a lot of folks don't know, and
No.
people. I think people get their rights violated. I don't want to say daily basis, but at least now and then.
Yeah.
Like I know I've had my rights violated when I was just my first time was when I was in the 8th grade.
Yeah.
I actually had got in a fight in school, but I grew up poor, so I didn't have a phone at home and
Yeah.
stuff. They couldn't call my house to tell my mom to pick me up. So the
Yeah.
school was like, and this is middle school, like 8th grade, 7th grade, and they're like, well, we can't call your mom, but you can't be in school, so you got to leave.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to leave myself,
Mm-hmm.
And I remember walking down the street, and I had to walk basically down the street. And I remember at that time, I had this little cassette player that my uncle had let me borrow, and I was bumping music, walking. I grew up in Inglewood, so I'm not your typical 7th grader either, I guess, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm kind of walking down the street, and then the sheriffs pull up. You
Yeah.
know, two guys jump out. You know, like if I'm like America's Most Wanted or whatever,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I'm a young kid. It's probably the first time I'm getting pulled over by the cops, and I'm
Yeah.
walking home, and they're like talking all this mess, and you know, I'm being kind of a smart ass, obviously too, and the guy smacks my head.
Yeah.
You get me? And then my headphones fall. And I'm just like, hey man, why'd you do that? You know?
Yeah.
And then I was like gonna pick my headphones up and he smacked my head up.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, you think you're tough, man? We'll kick your little ass and
Yeah.
kick your ass and then drop you off somewhere like that, you know?
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh shit, these fools are for real, you know?
Yeah.
That was my first
That's
interaction with them, you know? And they
yeah.
were asking me like, why are you leaving? You know, like why are you walking? I was like, hey, they kicked me out of school. They told me I had to go home. I'm going home. And they were like, oh well, um, they were like, what if we call the school or what if we take you back? I was like, hey, as long as you bring me back over here,
Yeah.
where you pick me up,
Yeah.
you know, then I'm good. And then they were just like, oh, you think you're smart and all that. And they
Yeah.
just start shoving me and stuff,
Yeah.
you know. And I'm a little kid, you know, so I'm just thinking, oh man,
You're
you
like
know?
14, 15
Yeah,
years old.
yeah.
I mean,
And that was my first time where I was like, I don't want to say I got scared. I felt anger, like man, like I honestly thought the sheriffs were cool cats.
yeah.
You get me?
Yeah.
And then that just ruined my whole experience. Where it's like, oh shit, I ain't never want to get pulled over by the sheriff. So
Yeah.
if I see them, I'm gonna run,
Yeah.
even if I'm not doing anything, because
Right.
I don't know if they're gonna treat me how they're gonna treat me. You know?
Right.
But yeah,
Right.
that's a personal experience I had when I was young. You know? And then obviously you deal with more high profile things than that. You know?
Yeah.
But that would be getting your
No,
rights violated,
absolutely.
right? Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, we'll start with the Fourth Amendment right there. That's unreasonable search and seizure, particularly them smacking you. I mean, that's excessive force for all intents and purposes. And then you have to think about it. You were this little 14-year-old kid.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure as much as you thought you were a little badass,
I wasn't that much of a
I'm
badass.
I'm sure you weighed 120 pounds. You were 5'2",
Yeah,
7th grader.
yeah.
And these two grown-ass men were bullying you.
With bulletproof vests.
And having their little
yeah.
way with you.
Yeah.
I mean, para decirlo así a lo...
Yeah,
I
in the
don't know.
broad daylight, off Crenshaw
Yeah.
and like 108.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
And you always think, because you do hear a lot of those stories, and you know, I'm sure people who are listening who are, I don't know, let's say, I don't know, people who are just so fortunate to not ever experience things like that.
Yeah.
They're like, that's from a movie. Does that really happen?
Mhm.
Yeah, you heard it here first. It happens all the time, right?
Yeah, there you go.
But as it pertains to, as an example, you know, police shootings, typically families feel the injustice in their loved one getting killed.
Mm-hmm.
That I've never had to convince a family like, hey, this happened to your child, even if the child's 28-year-old man, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've never had to articulate the violation to a family.
Okay.
They feel it, like,
Mhm.
and even in a circumstance where, let's say, the son had a knife, all right? Maybe he had some kind of psychotic episode. Maybe he's schizophrenic and had whatever, a pocket knife and gets shot. They still feel that injustice, right? And I think because it's so violent of a death. But I would say half the times, maybe like a third of the times when folks die in jail and the parents call me or like the wives call me, they feel a certain way, kind of like, is there a lawsuit? Well, I mean, he was in jail.
They automatically assume he's guilty of whatever.
Yeah. Or perhaps they think, and mind you, this is people who love their son or they love their husband, but they feel that perhaps because the community or society thinks less of their loved one, then maybe they shouldn't have been so protected in that environment.
Mm-hmm.
So lo que te pasó, güey.
Sure, sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does.
And to me, I've had to maybe 30% of the time have had to explain to families, like, no, in America, like, this is America, right? And you might feel a certain way about this country, and you may not.
Mm-hmm.
But what I do know about this country is that we do have a beautiful constitution that if we live up to the constitution, this is the best place to live ever.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, that constitution isn't always respected,
Sure.
right?
Or misinterpreted and
or
stuff.
misinterpreted
Yeah.
or followed by your local government or your federal government. And obviously, we'll get into that in just a bit here regarding the mass deportations that are going on.
Yeah.
But, you know, you heard it first here. If you didn't know, individuals, when they are in the government's custody, meaning an inmate, an incarcerated person, you have rights. You have, particularly under the 14th Amendment, and now I'm getting a little bit too much into the weeds, but
Sure.
it's important. Under the 14th Amendment Amendment to our Constitution, particularly a pretrial detainee, I'll explain once you're a post-conviction prisoner, things change a little bit, but not too much. But if you're a pretrial detainee and you're waiting in the county jail, and I don't care, for 2 years waiting for your goddamn day in court, under the 14th Amendment, it says that if the government has you under their custody, they have to provide you with medical care, mental health care, and that they got to protect you from harm.
All right.
All right. And a beautiful example of this is, no.
Oh no, little man just showed up, man. He's manning the cameras right there and stuff, you know. So, yeah. No, it's good. It's good. Just do your
No.
thing right there, dude.
Yeah. But let me, I think theoretically it sounds kind of like, all right, an inmate has a right to medical care, a right to mental health care, a right to be protected from harm. These are two examples that drive the point home. Right now I'm litigating a case where a transgendered female was housed with a convicted sex offender in a 10 by 10 foot cell, and he strangled her to death over a span of 67 minutes. Right? And ain't nobody from the corrections side, from the custody side, came to her rescue for 67 minutes.
Oh wow! And they have cameras in these
Now,
cells.
this is
I
what
would
I was
think, too,
getting
right?
to.
Yeah.
But yet, when you look at the surveillance footage, you see at least 3 different inmates over this 67 minute span walk by, and it's obvious that they could see something, right? Like they're shocked at what they're looking at.
Yeah.
And again, nobody did anything about anything. And there, the example there is that's a violation of that transgender female inmate. And mind you, she was so far along in her progression or transition, I apologize, she had breasts.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Yeah. So she
your
looked
house,
like a female and stuff. Yeah.
You get it, all right?
Yeah.
And she was HIV positive, so she was very fragile looking, all right? And there, the argument is the failure to protect from harm. A, they should have housed her in a different location. B, a lot of people don't know this, but at the most basic human right level that inmates have in California, specifically in California, and throughout the nation, but in California, inmates have a right to have direct supervision by a correctional officer once every 60 minutes.
Oh, okay.
All right.
So they gotta come check up on you, basically.
Yeah. And a lot of people think, well, I mean, damn, wouldn't you as an inmate actually not want that much supervision so you could just kind of do your thing, like, aquí andan otra vez, enfadándome, right?
Yeah.
No. The point is, heaven forbid you're getting raped.
Yeah.
Heaven forbid you're getting strangled to death.
Yeah, beat up. Or
Heaven
something.
forbid up. Heaven forbid you're having a medical emergency. You want to make sure that if you're going to be housed in a cell, someone's going to at least walk by every 60 minutes to check on you. Like, you good, man? Sounds good. We're going to keep on going. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
And then there, too, following the strangulation, the fact that nobody came to you for 67 minutes, and mind you, we know that the man down came in at a certain time.
Oh, okay.
They didn't show up for 20 minutes.
After that.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And
so those 7 minutes make a big deal because of their procedures.
20 minutes.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
20 minutes. Does that make sense? You get the man down. They don't come to you. It's 17 minutes, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. The point there is that's your failure to provide medical care. Because had they gotten to her, you don't know she would have survived that.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then another very basic example of, for example, your failure to provide mental health care to inmates is when they end up committing suicide, right? I always think, I don't understand how it is that if you're in the government's custody, you could die by committing suicide with not one person stopping you.
Yeah.
Literally.
Even if you hang yourself with blankets, like it's a process.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Not one person either saw you or certainly stopped you from getting to that point. Right? And I do a lot of suicides. And more often than not, there's red flags on the wall.
Okay.
All right.
And suicide's basically if you're in jail and you commit suicide, that's the government's fault,
Yeah.
and to some extent,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. See, I would never think that. It's like being out here. If you commit suicide, it's basically, like nobody's fault, right?
Yeah.
You know?
Right. I mean, that's obviously a layered conversation as
Mhm.
well. But if you think about it, you're housed in a cell where you're supposed to be protected from hazards,
Yeah, that makes sense, right?
and
Yeah.
you're supposed to be provided with mental health care,
Mhm.
right?
So they should have done like a psych and notice like, oh, this guy's not right.
Exactly,
Right? Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And certainly, if there's red flags that you have these suicidal tendencies, perhaps you shouldn't be allowing them to have pencils.
Mhm.
Perhaps don't be giving them bed sheets. You know what
Sure.
I mean? Like it's
Mhm.
very and it's funny because the whole like whose fault is it
Mhm.
when a person
Because as
dies
a
of
lawyer, you have to find it who's accountable
Yeah.
for it, right? Yeah.
And it's also the conditions of confinement,
Mm.
right? You're gonna grab this person, put them into the cell, and take their liberty away. You can't just let them do what they want to themselves.
Mhm.
And then, I mean, you're talking about mental health issues. Does that person even is cognizant of what's going on with themselves?
I
¿Sí me
see.
entiendes?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. See.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
All right. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
What's some of the most horrific cases that you've done? Like, if you don't mind sharing that with us, like that really kind of like, oh man, I can't believe that happened. That shocked you basically.
Yeah. I mean,
And I don't know if you can share a lot. A lot of it's public after the fact, right?
it
Yeah.
is, yeah, and especially my work, it's always they call it, it's a matter of public interest,
Okay.
right? When
Mhm.
people get killed by the police, people die in the government's custody, it's de facto a matter of public concern.
Mhm.
Um, one of the ones I think is really bothersome, and we're still actually litigating this case, is the Heidegger case that we have against the Riverside County Sheriff's Department. And that one pertains to, I represent 7 female detainees who were sexually abused by a correctional officer,
Oh man.
right? And they actually, what's
The
interesting,
same correctional
the
officer.
same correctional
Oh, wow.
officer, right? The same correctional officer who had been internally investigated for doing this obscene sexual video inside the jail,
Mm.
but they kept them on.
Oh.
Right? But ultimately,
And he's a deputy, or there's like a private
no,
jail thing.
yeah, he was a sheriff's deputy,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
but he worked within the corrections
Mhm.
branch, we'll
Oh,
call
okay.
it.
Yeah.
And what he would do is when women got into the jail, he would walk around, and I believe that he would pick out the ones that were vulnerable. ¿Sí
Like
me
he already
entiendes?
knew it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's
a predator and shit.
he's a predator,
Yeah, yeah.
right? He knew the ones that were vulnerable. He would pick them out and say, "Hey, I think that you're a great candidate to be on house arrest. How about that? You want that?"
Mhm.
And they're like, "Of course. Are
Yeah,
you
of course.
kidding me?"
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
like, "Yeah, sounds good. What do I
Yeah.
do?"
That's already like abuse of power too, right there,
Total,
right? Yeah.
total.
Mhm.
Yeah, sign me up.
Mhm.
And once they were on house arrest, he would begin the grooming and the predatory conduct. So much so that towards the end of this pattern, which with each of the women, it was like, "You better send me a photograph of you putting XYZ inside of your vagina,
Yeah, yeah.
or I'm gonna go put you back in jail and say goodbye to your 5-year-old son."
Oh man.
Crap like that.
Yeah, yeah.
¿Sí
That's
me
crazy.
entiendes?
It's sick. Yeah.
Sick,
Mhm.
sick behavior.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't bother anybody, if that's not just right there in and of itself bothersome, the reason why this case stands out so much is because of this. Once the sheriff's department found out about that,
7 victims. Yeah.
all of them,
Mhm.
more actually,
Sure. Okay.
because I don't represent all of them.
Okay.
You would think that they would put this guy in jail.
Mhm.
They didn't.
Oh.
They went to his house, they grabbed his phone, they confirmed things, and they told them, "You in a week, you're going to go to this station and turn yourself in. During that week, what they did, they brought each of the girls in to the jail under the guise of like, oh, your ankle monitor, the GPS isn't working, come into the station. They interrogated them, and then they offered them $5,000.
Oh, that's the one I saw that you were on the newsstand.
Yeah.
Or not newsstand, but doing a press conference of it, basically, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then they're like, all right, here's your money, and we're sorry about what happened to you. Sign this paper that basically released them from liability.
Yeah, the sheriff's department, right?
And once they were done, and literally one of the victims told me that she overheard, it was the last day of them doing that, that she overheard them walking away, and they said, that's the last girl.
Oh, man.
Like, they had a list.
Yeah.
¿Sí me entiendes? And every
so
day,
they knew.
Every day they checked off after they gave the hush money, and then, only then, did they then want him to turn himself in.
Because they had no case. No, right?
Yeah, because they had protected themselves. Are you kidding me? Right? And to me, because it goes to the whole bad apples and good apples argument. It's like, that was a system, a department that allows people like him to exist.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It's crazy.
Because it sends a message. Y'all could go and F around and do whatever the hell you want to people. But we're going to have your back, so to speak. Yeah, this guy's in prison. Don't misunderstand me. But see how they made sure to have themselves, their own back first? Then and only then did they put into place.
For him to get convicted.
Exactly. ¿Sí me entiendes? Yeah. And I think...
So, like, in a court case... Oh, go ahead, sorry.
No. Yeah. And so when I think of, like, for example, the most egregious case, like, I have cases where, you know, brain matter is coming out of the person's skull, right? Certainly shootings are horrific, you know. But that one, to me, in terms of the most shocking or egregious, it's such an example of how when the government goes unchecked, what they can do to people.
Yeah, it's scary.
And how
you're vulnerable too. You
and
know?
how they allow the messaging, even indirectly, to people who are out there being predators. Like, go for it, because we'll get your back. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
¿Sí me entiendes?
Yeah. And I, you know, another personal experience I have, and I hope people don't think this is like snitching and all that stuff, but you know, when I was young, I got into some issue too, and I ended up going to the county jail, right?
Yeah.
And mind me, not that I'm scared or anything. It was different though, right? And then the way it works, I guess, when you go from courts, they have these buses that come in. So I was one of the first ones in this big tank. It's like as big as this room, but it has windows all over or something. And then they keep dropping people off, or people that get caught from the streets. They bring them in. It's like before you go to processing or something, right? And I mean, you start off with 1, 2, 3. Next thing you know, it's like 100 people in there, right? Mostly gangbangers and stuff. You know, everybody kind of. Some people know each other, so then people. It's kind of like, how would I say, like the Wild Wild West in there. Like if you run into somebody that maybe you don't like, I don't know. I didn't have that issue. But it would seem like, hey, if you ran into somebody that didn't like you, you're going to have to fight it out or you're going to get jumped on the spot. Yeah. And I don't know if that would happen. I didn't see that happen, but that's the impression I got, right? And I was young, might have been 18, 19 at this time and stuff, you know? And I remember sitting there and seeing all these big guys come in there that are used to being in there and all that. And I'm young, like, you know, I'm like, all right, you know, I just carry myself, you know, whatever. Yeah. And then, you know, you start seeing people that you know, but you don't know them, but you know of them, or like they're from different areas, but from the same part, I guess, you know, without saying too much, I guess, you know.
Yeah.
And then it's so then the sheriffs start coming in. Once it's the last bus that comes, the sheriffs come in. At least this was my experience. I don't know if it still works this way. And they're all young. They're all young sheriffs that are working. I think it's like people that barely got hired. Yeah. And then they got to do their dues at county or something, right? Yeah. And then they start yelling, everybody line the fuck up, whatever they say, right? And then they line you up. You have to like face the wall. They don't want you looking at them. You got to look down. It's like this whole superiority thing.
Absolutely.
It could be for their protection also, right? But I feel like it's a power trip.
It's a psychology thing too, that they train literally like there's experts that come in and train correctional facilities how to run corrections,
Mm-hmm.
and part of that is taking away that psychological power that
Mm-hmm.
human beings have.
Yeah.
Like that, does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Like it's meant to scare you so that you
Yeah.
follow directions without
Exactly.
a doubt,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah.
And that's what it does, right? Because the guy walks in, super tough, right?
Mm-hmm.
Line the fuck up, face the fucking wall, and then the girl walks in. This is my experience, right? And then like, you heard I'm line the fuck up, you know? And I'm just
Yeah.
like, all right, you know. I would have lined up if they asked me, hey, can y'all please line up? I would have
Yeah.
lined up anyways. I'm
Yeah.
already here. What the fuck I'm
Yeah,
gonna do,
yeah,
right? You
yeah,
know?
yeah.
But them doing that makes it seem like it angers me, you know?
Yeah.
Like it makes me want to be more reactive, I guess, right?
Right.
But it's a trip because some people are reluctant. Some people are high or drunk, you know, because they just got picked up off the street. Some people are maybe they just beat their wife up that day and they're there and they're mad because their whole life fell apart now, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Or just straight up mental health issues.
yeah.
You know what you know?
And there was this guy
Yeah.
there that didn't want to face the wall for
Yeah.
some whatever fucking reason it was, and
Yeah.
shit, you know. And then he said something between his teeth or whatever, and the first guy that walked in there, some young cop, comes in and say like, "What you say?" And then he grabs him and starts choking him.
Yeah.
Boom, starts choking him, and he's like, "Nobody fucking look." And you know everybody's trying to like peek through the corner of their eyes, or like,
Yeah.
and people are yelling like, "Let him go!" And that fool's like, "Shut up, you're next," you know.
Yeah.
And he's choking this while he passes out laid on the floor and shit. You know?
Yeah.
And then they're like, everybody, you got to start walking through like this thing, right? And he's still like, this was normal day work. Like, this is just a day in work.
Yep.
And then he's like, all right, everybody line up, whatever, go to your, like follow whatever you have to do. I guess they have lines or something, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember, a long time ago, but, and people are walking over this dude,
Yeah.
you know, like, because
Yeah.
he was like in the middle of the line.
Yeah.
And people are walking over him, and everybody's just like, "Boy," and this guy's just talking, man. But I was like, "Damn, like, what would happen there?"
Yeah.
You know, because I don't think they even have cameras in those little areas and stuff. You know,
Yeah.
that would be a rights violation, I would assume
yeah.
too, right?
Hell yeah.
Even if you're not following directions, though?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and then to boot, I mean, think about it. A chokehold. People die from chokeholds.
Mm-hmm.
All right. In
Yeah,
California,
the guy was turning like blue,
yeah,
you know?
yeah. And in California, thankfully to God, they don't allow that anymore,
Mhm.
right? But I mean, at its most basic level, that's obviously excessive force.
Mhm.
Y con suerte, he obviously didn't die,
Yeah.
right?
He was. He could. You could tell he was breathing. He was just passed out. You know?
Right,
Like
right,
like
right.
snoring almost and shit. Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, and you think, you know, when that guy woke up, what did they tell him that happened?
I didn't see it. I didn't see
No,
after, but
no,
yeah.
but you
Mhm.
think about that,
Yeah.
right? They're like, "Hey, brother, you know, XYZ," or they're like, "That's you know, lesson learned. Next time you act up, that's what's
Mhm.
gonna happen." And you know, I'm not sure.
So me, I was like, I'm gonna follow every little direction they give me to
Right.
the T, you know.
Right.
And I'm smaller than most of these guys in there, you know.
Right,
Yeah, yeah.
right.
Mhm.
But and what's sad is too, if you think about it, how many deputies were in the room with you guys? Probably five.
Yeah, 5 or 6.
All
Yeah.
right. Maybe two of those.
All
it-
young though.
No,
Yeah.
pa acabarle, right? And I
Mhm.
have thoughts on that as well. And I remember when I used to do some work for the sheriff's department, I would tell them that
Mhm.
because it was part of the trajectory, if you will. The second you're done with the academy, you will unequivocally go and serve 2 years in corrections.
Okay.
And to me, I'm like, that don't make sense.
You're gonna deal with the worst.
Exactly.
And I don't want to say the worst because there's a lot of innocent people, and I met a lot of
Yeah,
good people that
yeah.
day too. You know, so
No,
yeah.
a bunch of, you know,
But there's some, you know,
immature,
yeah,
not experienced,
and mad because they're there.
mad because they're
Mhm.
there, ni madre, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I've been in, you know, at least a good 50 jails at this point.
Yeah, yeah,
You know what I'm
see?
saying?
Yeah.
It ain't a good, you know, environment, all right?
Mhm.
You know, yeah, they're usually more cowboy, right? When
Yeah.
they're younger.
Mhm.
A veces también son bien tontones, and then the department hasn't quite figured that out yet.
What's tontones, like dumb?
Yeah,
Okay.
like just straight up.
Jar heads and stuff. Yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Where you get it. Like to them, they might even think like, you ain't got no rights.
Mhm.
Like true,
Now
and
this was a
believe that.
criminal and stuff.
You know
right?
what I
Yeah.
mean? Whether it's because they're a bad person or just straight up because they're dumb,
Mhm.
right? But my whole point is, anyway, I mean, that's the whole other conversation to be had regarding better hiring, the way that you place folks inside of custody corrections,
Mhm.
right? But the whole point is what I was getting to is, you have 5 of them in there. I'm sure at least 2 of the 5 were like, all right, well, I guess this is the way shit gets done in here.
That's what they learn.
And how sad is that?
Yeah, yeah.
¿Sí me entiendes?
Yeah.
Whereas if you had a good apple, as you and I keep saying,
Mm-hmm.
right, who was in there and was like, look, we're going to treat these people like human beings.
Yeah.
The way we would want to be treated.
Nobody wants to be here.
¿Sí me
Right?
entiendes?
Yeah, but let's just get through it.
Gentlemen, line up.
Yeah.
If y'all could please face the wall or whatever. The
Sure.
facing the wall might be because of security reasons.
Sure.
I'm not even going to question that one. But like, all right, folks, thanks so much. Thanks for cooperating. That wouldn't have even happened. I bet you. This whole choking out of another human being, had it just from the get started, what is it? You give respect to get respect.
Sure. Yeah.
And
then people react different for
Yeah.
sure to how you talk to them and stuff. You know? And in the day, however their day is going, right? You're gonna react based on your emotional level too, right? Yeah.
And you brought up a very good point that that's at intake. That's when y'all just got arrested or are getting processed.
Yeah.
Odds are you're drunk, you're high.
Yeah.
Either you're still going through some kind of psychosis, meaning the mentally ill folks.
Like, I can't believe I'm here. Oh, shit.
Yeah. Or you're right. Maybe it's DV that just got in. And, obviously without getting into domestic violence issues and, of course, who's right and what's wrong in that aspect. But the person's fired up still.
Yeah.
So it's like you have a perfect storm so that when you act that way with individuals, someone's going to pop off.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Someone's going to pop off.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd argue, like, are you even doing that to go and get the reaction? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
as
yeah,
a
it does.
deputy?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah?
Like, you want something to pop off.
Total.
So,
Yeah, maybe you had a bad day at work, so you're going to go and take it out on somebody.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Somebody.
You just need a reason.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
It's crazy, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This, I was...
Yeah, but that's one of the worst things I've seen, rights being violated, at least from my understanding and stuff, that I was just like, oh, man,
Yeah.
But I would have never known, like, I wouldn't call a lawyer, I guess. If that happened to me, I probably wouldn't have called a lawyer anyways either,
Right.
I don't know why I would have just charged it to the game, how they say, right? Kind of like, oh, man, that's for me acting up,
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But
like, you deal with more high-profile stuff, though, like some crazy stuff, Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, I do. And, as an example with a lot of people are like, are you a conspiracy theorist, whatever. And I'm like, man, the stuff that I've seen.
Yeah. The stories you've heard,
the stories I've heard. And then, not to gas myself up or anything, but I actually joke about this. I say, it's that Latina in me.
All right.
Yeah, like I'm like
got
all
some
my
fire in you.
no but all my ex-boyfriends hate me because of this.
Oh, really? Why?
Because of that intuition that I have.
Like a detective and stuff.
Yeah, that gut feeling and
I know what you're talking about because my wife tells me the same exact thing. She's like, I know when something's up.
Yeah.
And I consider myself a good man, but still, women find whatever it is and stuff. And she's always like, I could have been a detective. I was like, so it's funny that you're saying that too.
No,
stuff,
it's something, and it's funny because I have my firm, Gastélum Law. It's 5 amazing chingona Latina women.
Power to the women, huh?
Yeah.
All women firm and stuff.
Yeah, all women
focus
firm.
on civil rights.
All focus on civil rights.
All right.
Mexican. 3 of us have Sinaloa roots. One is Cuban, has Cuban roots.
Yeah.
But we say that, and I work often a lot of cases too with I call him my brother in the law, Christian Contreras. And I have this saying that I'm like, you heard it first here. Like when I first get a case and I start like digging, and I have this theory, I'm like, I think this is what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Or like they're saying XYZ, but that didn't happen, man.
Yeah.
I'm gonna prove XYZ.
Yeah.
Like I just have this. Again, I think it's like the purpose, right?
Yeah.
Like, God put me on this earth for this work. And
it also comes with experience too, right? Like as you deal with more cases, you're kind of like, oh man, like
como este cuento ya me lo dijeron.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. For real.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, so that's a little bit of the work I do, and
you've been doing that for how long already now?
I've been in the game for about 15 years. I've been practicing law for about 13.
Oh, wow.
Because this is going to be my 14th year.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
And then, so, like, and switching gears a little bit, you know, I think you're doing great work for sure, and I think exposing a lot of these things so that at least people understand they have their rights, even though
Mm-hmm.
they're in prison, in jail, or stopped by the police. Not necessarily doesn't make them the authority, right? They are the
Yeah.
authorities,
Yeah.
but what they do sometimes necessarily doesn't mean they're right. They're doing the right thing, right?
Right.
And I think that's good to bring exposure, especially how you're saying now with all these cameras and everything. Like, at least there's more accountability and stuff,
Yeah.
right? That we could do as a society, right? You know?
Yeah. And I think um, the government has as much control as we allow them to have.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I'm not saying per se take away government control.
Sure.
It's we as citizens, and I don't mean citizen. You get it. Like
Sure.
citizens, residents, I don't care. Document.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
as people who are part of this community, this society, whichever society we're talking about, whether it be California, United States, hell, Torrance, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have allowed you, certain people, to run the government,
Yeah.
right? With the agreement that you don't violate our rights, with the agreement that you run our community and our society a certain way that we have all agreed to,
Mm-hmm.
with the agreement that you're going to provide us with certain protections. ¿Sí me entiendes? But it's an agreement
Sure.
amongst the people.
Yeah. Here, and take my tax dollars so
Yeah,
we can
yeah.
fund all this.
So you give the government or allow them to have as much control as you are allowing them to have,
Mhm.
as you're allowing them to possess. So the more times that we see people getting their rights violated, whether it's our own rights, our family's rights, or a stranger's rights, the more we are relinquishing that control that we agreed to.
I
¿Sí
see.
me
Yeah,
entiendes?
yeah, yeah.
And the more, and that's the
It's
good
like
old,
see something, say something, right?
exactly,
You
it's
know?
the good
Yeah.
old checks and balances
Yeah.
of this country of ours,
Mhm.
right? We're supposed to be the people who are checking and making sure that things are balanced.
Right. Yeah, that
Right.
makes sense, right? Because
Mhm.
they have the people that are supposed to do the work, but they need the people that are checking to make sure the work's being done right.
Mhm,
Like a
mhm.
supervisor in a way, you know?
Yeah.
Kind of like we're all little supervisors and stuff, you know?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And whenever I've had the experience of coming up, against a police officer or sheriff's deputy, and again, a lot of them, I mean, shit, a lot of them even come to me sometimes like, hey, man, this is going down at work. Like, should I, racial discrimination or
No.
sexual harassment by some
Mhm.
of the female deputies I've come
Oh,
across.
okay.
They'll
Yeah,
come to
yeah.
me to try to get me to be their attorney.
Yeah.
Anyway, but
So
the
even
ones-
within their own ranks sometimes, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But I for sure have come across some of them who try to get, super disrespectful with me for no reason.
Mhm.
Does that make sense? Like I'm being professional with you,
Sure.
but you want to treat me a certain way in a legal proceeding.
Yeah.
Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
yeah.
And I'm always like, don't forget that people, because of me, have allowed you to have that badge.
Mhm.
All right? It's a privilege to have a badge.
Yeah.
We gave you permission to have that badge.
Mhm.
And we'll take it away as fast as we gave it to you.
Yeah, yeah.
Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
yeah. Oh, that's
And
good. Yeah.
yeah.
And do you ever feel intimidated dealing, like, especially with police officers? Because, growing up as kids or just people, you always learn that, the police are the protectors, the police are there to help, right? Like everything. So when you have to go against them, and, we all know that the police are tough, right?
Yeah.
They're tough guys, right? Or tough people. They have to be too, right? Obviously, some of the things they have to deal with
Right.
are necessary for that, right? Do you ever feel intimidated taking on the department, like the sheriff department or any PD department or anything like that?
I don't.
No.
I don't. And I think that's a very good thing about me because I wouldn't be doing the work that I do if I allowed
Not so
that.
good,
¿Sí me
right?
entiendes?
Yeah.
But don't misunderstand me, like my oldest brother, Lalo, I got a department right now that things are real hot.
Mm-hmm.
And I got them, you get it in every which way right now.
Okay.
I think I have a good 23 cases against them, all different types of crazy cases,
Oh, wow. Yeah,
right? Truly establishing systemic failures
yeah. Mm-hmm.
and from the top all the way down.
Oh, that's terrible.
Right?
Right. Yeah.
All the way down. In
Mhm.
every which way, shootings, sex abuse, jail deaths, you name it, and I got them.
Mm-hmm.
And my brother, we talked, and he actually came and put up a whole goddamn surveillance system around my
Right.
house.
That's what I.
Because he was like,
yeah.
baby girl.
Yeah.
And, he's like, we need to get you a gun. And,
Yeah.
we'll-
Yeah, and it sucks
Yeah.
because there is some truth to that maybe, right? And,
Yeah.
and the thing is that you don't know,
yeah.
right? And that's the scary part. I think that like how far are some of these guys willing to go too, right?
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to in a way,
Yeah.
right? And yeah, but
I have to
more
do.
power to you for sure, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to go into jails often to inspect cells,
Mm-hmm.
right? And my mom gets real nervous when I do that. But what's interesting is like when I've gone, or for example, when I've gone to the recently, I just went to the CDCR, the California Department of Corrections, like the
Okay.
prisons,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And like I go and they're like, "Hey, Miss Gastélum, thank you so much for the work you're doing for the Matus family. We appreciate you."
Mm-hmm.
Like I get that from the incarcerated folks in there.
Mm-hmm.
And so, because my mom gets scared, not because my mom's like, she's like, what if algo te va a pasar? Te
Sure,
van a,
sure.
quién sabe qué.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm like, shit, I feel like if something were to happen to me, the inmates would come and protect me.
There you
Isn't
go,
that
right?
crazy?
Yeah, that
like,
is
because
crazy.
they know that I'm there for them.
Yeah.
But what I will say is, yeah,
No,
that's
that's
just,
good. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And then and Lisa, yeah, one of our people that tapped in left a comment when you were saying about regarding the you don't know what it is, but you already kind of see a case and say
Yeah.
this is what happened.
Yeah.
She said God's working through you. You know,
I love
she
that.
always leave lovely comments like that and stuff too.
I
you
love
know,
that.
yeah.
In my office, and maybe I'll send you a picture. Actually, I think I have a picture.
Mm-hmm.
In my office, there's a wall that's right to my right. And I have all these beautiful photographs of all of the folks who've died, who I represent, who
Oh
are my
man.
victims.
Yeah, yeah.
And then on this wall, I have Post-its that it says spirit work. And that's one of my associates, Selena Estrada Villela. She's amazing. I got so lucky with her, but she was just telling me, like, because it's really heavy work.
Yeah.
And she's
That
only
must
been
take a toll. Yeah, on
Yeah.
the heart and stuff. For sure,
Yeah.
on the mind, no? Yeah.
really heavy work. And she was
Mhm.
just telling me, like, hey, like, I was just thinking about the work we do. And it's like spirit work. She's
Mhm.
like, these people have died horrifically, either violent or just straight up neglect. Like
Yeah.
a diabetic, they know they need insulin. They're like, ni madre, te vamos a dar insulin. Like,
Damn.
algo
Yeah.
así,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And she's like, and then they pass away. And we're doing all this work for them. And we're just busting our asses. And we're like proving the government wrong. And she's like, and I think that there's somewhere in this other place, whatever you want to call
Sure.
it, heaven, whatever.
Yeah.
Like looking down on us and being like, hell yeah, like thank you for doing that for me.
Yeah, yeah.
Because what happened to me was fucked up.
Yeah, and then you prevent it from happening to somebody
Yeah.
else, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah.
And I have many nights where I'm working till like you get at 2:00 in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll like just kind of touch my wall, and it just
Something comes to you. And
Yeah.
Say, oh wow. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I know people are probably
Yeah.
like, damn, está loca esta.
Yeah, yeah.
But it goes back to like
Mhm.
this purpose and just feeling so connected in the work you do that it's just really good stuff.
That's good, and it's
Yeah.
good to hear that you're passionate about it too, right? Because it's not just a job for you, right? Like you
Yeah.
actually want
Yeah.
to fix the world,
Yeah.
right? Basically,
Mhm.
in a way, we
Mhm.
need more people like that for sure. But yeah, like close it out a little bit here, like, especially with all this immigration stuff that's going on and stuff,
Yeah.
right? Like some crazy stuff. I've seen some stories, just like it blows my mind. There was a lady here in Londo that was just arrested going to work.
Yeah.
They're saying that they're arresting a lot of criminals, like, and I use that word vaguely. It's just what they said.
Yeah.
Maybe they had a past history of running with the law, and then they're still undocumented, so they're going to their addresses and getting them right.
Yeah.
I just saw a dad that was deported, taking their son to school,
Yeah.
but he had a law and like a case, but it was even expunged from his record, but it was still, I guess, federally. You can see everything, I guess. I'm not sure. And then they picked them up. So these are stories I'm seeing either like on TikTok, Facebook, because I feel like you got to rule out the fake news, but I feel like I'm getting more accurate news through the social medias than I am getting from the actual news channels,
Yeah.
right? Because on the news, they're all saying, oh, these are all criminals. These are all like, that's what they're going after. And it's just like, whoa, that was a dad that was working. And if he had a passed in with running with the law back then and it got closed out, then to me, that's not a criminal anymore, right? Like
Yeah.
he's working, providing for his family and
Yeah.
all that, right? So how do you think like a lot of this, like, I guess my real question is like, what are some tips we can give to our folks that have to deal with this type of stuff, that are watching or
Yeah.
listening, or have a family member maybe that has some issues like with that, like with ICE. I keep hearing on the news right now that ICE is gonna have a big
Yeah. Los
sting,
Angeles.
yeah, right in
Mm-hmm.
LA, and it
And that
looks like
leaked.
it's already been in process and stuff.
Yeah.
They just did Denver, Colorado. They've been doing Bakersfield, Texas, right? Like all these areas. Like, what's some advice you can give to some of our listeners, um,
Yeah. No, no, no. And
to make sure at least they understand their rights, right?
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And just one thing that you touched on that I've been feeling this way, especially since January 20th. Of course, when Trump came into office and put in place this mass deportation, right? That we're seeing. But I remember thinking, 'cause you were saying that one of them was just this father who's dropping off his
Yeah.
kid that maybe I think had like a past, criminal
Yeah.
history, etc. But obviously changed his life around. And what's interesting to me, I'm liberal, I'm a progressive, I'm a Democrat. I'm not religious, I'm very spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these mass deportations, if you will, this whole anti-immigrant movement comes from, and I'm gonna, not to get political, but I'm
Sure.
gonna call a spade, it comes from Republican, conservative type politics,
Yeah.
right? And what's interesting
Which
is,
is a minority
no,
now in the U.S.
sí, sí, sí,
Right?
sí.
Yeah.
Pero the conservative political wing, if you will, are also very religious.
Mm-hmm.
They're also very Christian.
Yeah.
So my thing is, aren't we about redemption?
Mm-hmm.
Aren't we about forgiving people? Aren't we about allowing them to fall on their sword and say, I messed up. I did XYZ. I want to change. Please give me a chance to change. It's that good old what would Jesus do?
Mm-hmm.
Que no?
Yeah. Right.
¿Verdad?
Exactly.
Well,
Yeah.
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 You think Jesus
That my
would
moral
do?
compass is saying that's not really good.
¿Sí me entiendes?
Yeah.
So to me, I'm like, all right, these people are talking out of both sides of their mouth.
No.
And I mean that. And it's not to get political, but if you're going to stand up for one thing, you got to make sure that everything else is in line with that one thing.
Makes sense. Yeah.
¿Sí me entiendes?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then, and to be honest with you too, I mean, and I forget, Tony, are you Mexican or?
Yeah. So my mom's Guatemalan and my dad's Mexican.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm Mexican.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me if right now, with the mass deportation orders that have come into place since January 20th, you don't feel that they are attacking our people,
Yeah.
Latinos.
I think not only attacking our people, but I think they're setting, like a precedent so that we can be treated not equal.
That's exactly what I'm getting
Right?
to.
This is like segregation reversing. To
Yeah.
me, that's
Yeah,
how
yeah.
I see it, right?
Yeah.
And I
It-
think, and this personal opinion, I think that's what the cartels, they involve that with this, and
Yeah,
I think it's just
yeah.
creating this whole miscommunication
It's
of
to muddy up our beautiful,
the good people.
to muddy us up, to make us seem, and I mean that.
Yeah.
All right, and I'm gonna stick to my guns on this one.
Mm-hmm.
They're attacking Latinos.
Yeah.
All right, hay otros inmigrantes en este país.
Yeah.
All right, there's other immigrants in this country who are from other places, other countries, who look different from us.
Yeah.
All right, but they are unequivocally after our people.
Yeah.
And what that is doing, it's making us, our people, Latinos, los de Guatemala, El Salvador, appear to be less than human, appear to be ugly,
Mm-hmm.
appear to be dangerous,
Yeah.
appear to be violent, predatory.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want that.
Yeah.
There's a stink there. And what's crazy is there's a lot of documentaries right now, or even a lot of articles regarding what Hitler did to the Jewish people.
Mm-hmm.
¿Sí me entiendes?
Yeah.
The propaganda against them.
Yeah. Because that's what it creates. And
Yeah.
not to cut you off, but
Yeah.
going back to kind of like how I feel is that when they create this president, it makes it easier to treat us different.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
It gives everybody else, not just white people, everybody, a free pass in terms of the mistreatment that they give to our people.
Mm-hmm.
¿Sí me entiendes? And to me, that's why I think, like, look, I'm not an immigration attorney, but a couple weeks ago, my team and I mentioned also Attorney Contreras, we were like, you know what? We're not immigration attorneys, but you know what we are? We're constitutional law lawyers, baby.
Yeah.
And we know the Constitution like nobody else.
Mm-hmm.
And then
I
we
should
also
have paid more attention in school to know
no,
the Constitution too.
yeah.
You know.
Hey, it's never too
I know.
late.
I only know freedom of speech. Yeah.
No, it's never
And they're
too-
taking that away from us, right?
Total,
You know?
yeah. But anyway, my whole point
Yeah.
is we got together. We had a few calls from our clients saying like, look, I don't even want to leave to go get grocery store. I even got a call, a new case that I just have, horrific jail death case. The wife called me. She's like, I don't want to do it anymore. And I was like, ¿Por qué, señora? She's like, I don't want to get deported. And I'm like, look, I get it because I mean I'm a citizen. I was born in this country. It's easier to be like, oh, no tenga miedo, no tenga miedo, right? But obviously I counseled her and I gave her the advice that obviously we're going to get to in just a second here. But I remember thinking that we do need to obviously get together as Latinos and protect one another. So let me just give you a few of the, I guess, tips, if you will.
Yeah. And again, everybody's case is different, right? But these are civil rights.
Yeah. It's
like basic rights that you have as a human being here in the U.S., right?
And this is a little bit of good old, hey, I'm an attorney, so I could do this.
Yeah.
Good old know your rights 101.
Yeah, cool.
Real quick regarding immigration and how to protect yourself and protect your loved one. I think first things first, people don't understand that, as an example, when search warrants, this is kind of basic, but it's not.
Okay.
It's not. You know, search warrants and arrest warrants are very specific documents that A, have to be unequivocally signed by judges for them to be valid, and B, it has to have the correct address and be very specific about what it is that they're searching or what is that they're arresting, right? And I think, again, it's easier said than done because I have to put myself in the shoes of a person who might be undocumented, who now you have somebody knocking on your door that's government looking, and they're like, open the door. I don't know, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if the firecracker in me would be like, hell no, let me see the warrant. I don't know.
Me either.
¿Sí me entiendes? But what I can tell you, the community, is at least try to protect yourself and protect your loved one and try to not be scared. And so if you could muster that up in you to not be scared, I would ask that you please, A, not open the door. All right?
So you don't have to open the door.
B, well, not open the door at the outset.
Okay.
Not to open the door at the outset. Ask them to show you the warrant either underneath the door so you could look at it or through a window. All right? And if, for example, it's not actually signed by a judge or it's incorrect in any way, you could tell them to go away and say that's an invalid warrant.
Have you seen people trying or officers use warrants without signatures?
Absolutely. I've actually had a civil rights case where I was able to prove that that there was deception in getting the warrant. Anyway, I mean that exists. But one thing specifically though regarding an ICE deportation order, meaning it's actual ICE agents, not local law enforcement. Look, if they have an order to deport you, the last thing you want to do is open the door and let them into your home because that is a free-for-all for anybody else who's undocumented in there.
So once they're inside your house, they can be like, who are you?
Yeah.
Who are you?
No,
and what's your status?
Y mi punto es, let's say, you're undocumented and indeed they are coming to your door and indeed that order's for you. You obviously want to protect your loved ones. You want to walk outside of your house. And a lot of people don't understand that.
You got to take that for the team, basically.
I hate to say that, but we're talking about the worst case scenario. Ya estás ahí. In the worst case scenario, why are you going to go and jeopardize everybody else?
Like your husband or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
And a lot of people don't understand that deportation orders doesn't give any ICE agent the power to walk into your home.
Okay.
Hence, and
it's not a criminal warrant where they need to search the house for a gun or something like that,
so
right?
you want to remove yourself from your home to protect your loved ones and then speak with them outside. And then another thing is,
so you can just tell them, hey, I'm going to come outside.
Yeah.
like step back. I'm gonna
Yep,
come
I'm gonna walk
outside. Yeah.
outside.
What if they try and like force themselves in once you open the door?
I mean, obviously, then it goes back to human 101. What are you
Mm-hmm.
gonna do? Fight them? I mean, of course, you should say stop.
Stop. Right.
I've already told you to stop,
Mm-hmm.
right? And try to make sure, God willing, there's other folks there, that other ICE agents that might be like, hey, you heard,
Yeah. Yeah.
Miss Gastélum, she said to stop. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
let's chill out.
Okay.
Let her walk out.
Mm-hmm.
But I was gonna say, and again, so we're talking about worst case scenarios. A lot of times too, like, once you're actually in some kind of either jail or I mean jail. I think you even
Once you're detained and
yeah,
stuff,
once
right?
you're detained, but
Mm-hmm.
more so and you start going through the deportation not proceedings per se, but obviously getting sent to the centers. One thing to do,
I had all my questions
no,
right
no,
here
you're
written
fine.
down too.
One thing to do is certainly don't sign any documents
Okay.
without an attorney, and don't answer any questions regarding your immigration status. You have the right to remain silent.
So you just
Unequivocally.
exercise that. So
Yeah.
once you're detained,
Yeah.
it's like
Yep.
I need to talk to a lawyer
Yeah.
first,
Yep.
and then they have to get you
Yeah.
either the public. Or you still have the right for a public defender?
No, I mean at that point, it wouldn't be a public defender,
Mm-hmm.
but you want to make sure you still don't answer any questions regarding your immigration status, because especially right
You're
now,
incriminating
yeah,
yourself. Mm-hmm.
exactly. Especially if you're
Yeah.
undocumented.
And I would think the first thing that they would want to do is get you to sign that you're leaving.
Yeah, yeah,
And then they probably put
Yeah.
a paper and say,
And
you want to
don't-
go home?
don't-
Well, this is the paper,
Yeah.
right? And they trick you, right? I
Yeah.
would think they're like, you want to go home? Well,
Yeah.
sign right here. You go home right now. You sign
Right.
this, right? And then,
And with signing, oftentimes you're waiving your right to even fight your case, and you don't even know that you're doing that.
yeah.
But one of the things too that I think, like you and I right now are talking about worst case scenarios.
Sure.
Straight up, you're en route to getting deported. One thing to think about is God willing, you don't end up in those situations.
Sure.
But what do you do to think ahead to protect your family?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of organizations, I myself on my Instagram page, I want to say, and on my website, on my website, have put up, it's called like family readiness packets.
Okay.
And you could just Google that.
I have that as a question. What would you
Yes.
suggest? Yeah.
Yeah. It's like family readiness packets. Shirla does it, ACLU does it. Again, my firm created one that's based on a lot of other amazing organizations that essentially prepare people
Mm-hmm.
for these worst case
Okay.
scenarios. Because the
Yeah.
last thing you want to do is, heaven forbid, you get deported y dejaste ahí tus niños de 6 años, 12 años.
Because they're not taking, ICE won't take the kids, right?
No.
No?
And you want to make sure that they end up in people's hands that you trust.
Yeah, not into the system.
Yeah, the system, or even a family member that you never even wanted your kids to end up with them, right? So there's these, like, for example, caregiver affidavits that you could fill out. They're very easy to find. It's good to get them notarized. You don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
It's good to create documents that kind of like, right now, I'm a little bit OCD. I kind of have everything memorized in my
no
head.
worries. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No. But
You
I
got to
think-
have a plan, though.
Yeah.
Like, what do you want for your kids? And it's crazy, too, because sometimes they're taking the breadwinner, so you won't be able
Yeah.
to pay the rent
Yeah.
or something, right?
Well,
You
that's
know?
what I mean. Like, I am a different being. Like, I have everything memorized, meaning I know all of my bank accounts. I even know some of my credit cards by heart. I know my social security. I know my mother's social security.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people aren't like that.
Yeah.
And so you do need a system in place. And it sounds silly, like, oh my God, I'm going to sit down and write this all out, where my kids go to school and my bank accounts. And
Sure.
yeah, you should.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you get deported, I mean, or you begin the deportation proceedings, the odds are against you. You're probably never going to step back into your home.
Yeah.
So
And you
why
still need
not?
your kids to go to school. You still need, like, the process to continue as
Exactly.
best as they could, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But anyway, that's just
Yeah, it has a
something-
range of plan for children.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
What about, like, I have some, what if they come to your workplace and stuff?
And see, that gets a little tricky too, because right now I was actually talking to somebody recently about that, and their employer, they work at a factory,
Mm-hmm.
and the person who was telling me the story is a citizen, but he works with a lot of undocumented folks.
Okay. Yeah.
And the employer literally had a meeting with them and said, hey, look, if ICE comes, like, the last thing y'all want to do is run, right? Because they're gonna catch you.
Mm-hmm.
But the employer themselves did a little bit of a know your rights type of.
Oh, that's cool.
I thought
Yeah.
I appreciated
Yeah.
that. You
Mm-hmm.
know, you don't really hear that often.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think it goes back to, even as an example, if they stop you in the middle of the street,
Mm-hmm.
the whole right to remain silent. Um, I always say, don't lie.
Okay. Yeah.
Don't lie, because
Uh-huh.
all it's gonna do is gonna get stacked up against you as well, right?
Yeah. That already ruins your character, right? So
yeah.
if you try and say something, it's like, well,
Yeah.
he's lying. Look, he lied
Yeah.
over here.
Don't produce anything that's false.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like a false social security. That's just gonna be worse for you also.
Mm-hmm.
And again, easier said than done,
Yeah.
right? Easier said than done, but that's just kind of more thinking. Um, you know, setting yourself up should that happen to you, right?
Yeah. Let me see. It goes back to like, what rights do ICE have? Like, if they go to your workplace, how can immigrant parents prepare for their children? We answered that.
Yeah.
Um,
Like I said, a lot of this is on my Instagram page too.
so we'll link the Instagram page for
Yeah.
anybody that wants to go through it and stuff, you know, and get to know you at least. Also, if they need to contact you for any reason, you know, any civil rights cases or anything that pops up like that, or recommendations for immigration attorneys as well
Right.
too, right?
Right.
You know?
Yeah, and that's one thing my mom always says is la atención that you give to people. But I get a lot of calls where I don't take. I probably take one case a month purposely, maybe
Okay.
2 cases a
And
month.
they're probably big cases too, right? Like you
Yeah,
said, it's a lot of work into it and
But
stuff, right?
we take calls, and I speak to a lot of people who want to hire me, and meaning I'll guide them the best I can, or at least provide them with some kind of recommendation for another resource or attorney.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Atención.
Cool. I'm trying to read the comments to see if anybody had a
Yeah.
question and stuff, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
So let them know where they can find you too.
Yeah. So you can find me on my social media, I guess Instagram, Denisse_Gastélum_ESQ, or of course my website, and that's gastelumfirm.com, GASTELUM firm FIRM.com. And I'm very, like I said, accessible. I get DMs. I usually respond to my DMs within like 24 hours.
Yeah. And we were able to put this together last week and stuff, you know,
Yeah.
so I'm glad you made time to come in and talk to us a little bit about your personal experience and all that, and let people know about their rights and stuff like that. That I think, I don't want to say that I'm ignorant to a lot of it and stuff, you know, and like you said, I've seen a lot of stuff that I just be like, oh shit, that's crazy. But I never thought of like, oh man, this guy should call an attorney or whatnot, right? You know?
Right.
But no, it's good to know and good to see that there's actually people fighting for our rights out there too.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that was great. You got to work with Johnny Cochran too and stuff,
Yeah.
man. You know, I
No,
grew up as a kid being like, call
Yeah.
Johnny Cochran, you know?
Yeah.
Like, right?
No, what is it? Getting it? Get yourself a good lawyer like Johnny Cochran, the lawyer.
Yeah.
No, he had passed away by then. But
Oh, okay.
But his office, literally his office space, I want to say still is intact. Like, so it was a thing at the firm.
He's like a legend, right?
Yeah, like we would go in there for like
Oh, yeah.
for
the spiritual
Yeah.
guidance and stuff.
yeah. But yeah, no, that guy was such a legend. I read a couple of his autobiographies. I've read a lot of just books on the way that he would practice law. He was actually one of the very first attorneys who started actually suing police. Like,
Oh, okay.
we had the ability to start suing police. I want to say like in the 60s for like for violations of civil rights, but people they weren't really doing it,
Okay.
right?
It
And
must have been like real tough cases too, right?
yeah,
You know?
and in one of his autobiographies, he talks about that he was an excellent criminal law lawyer. Also, that's kind of where a lot of when he went on his own, he started doing a lot of criminal defense work. So he wrote this beautiful paragraph that basically said, like, the reason why he got inspired to start doing police brutality and suing police for doing things to people. He said, I found it odd that I'd go to my arraignment hearings for all of my clients. You know, he'd just sit there waiting for his client to come out for an arraignment. He's like, and I'd see all of these black gentlemen walk, you know, getting arraigned for assault on peace officer charges. He's like, and when I always found it odd that when I saw the alleged victim, the police officer, the victim didn't have one bruise or scratch on him.
Compared to the person.
But yet, the person who had the assault on peace officer were black and blue.
Oh, man. Yeah.
He's like, and I found that odd.
Yeah.
So I started going up to them and being like, here's my card. Call me.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to talk about what happened to you. So then he started suing the officers for excessive force.
Oh, man.
¿Sí me entiendes?
Yeah, yeah.
And that's where a lot
He built
of
his
that.
career from.
Yeah.
And, stuff, huh?
And that's just a beautiful thing that he sat there in that courtroom and said, you know what?
Something's off here.
Yeah.
And questioned it, you know, right?
And did something about it.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, definitely. Well,
Yeah.
again, thanks a lot for coming by. You know, we appreciate your time, and we'll link all your bios on the episode here so that people can reach you if they have any questions, if you don't mind, of course.
Of course.
And,
thank you.
Nah, thanks again.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
definitely. Hope you
appreciate it.
enjoyed it.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you so much, everybody, and stay safe out there. And if y'all have any questions, of course, reach me through DM or on my website. I have a consultation form. I think you send like a little question in there. But thank you for having me. This was great.
All right, cool.
Yeah,
cool.
thank you.
All right. Thanks everybody that tapped in, and remember on our website we got buy one get one free on the hats and beanies. You can mix and match them. Make sure you go to the www.thewestfactoryshop.com, get some of that gear. Thanks a lot for tapping in, everybody. Stay up. Enjoy your weekend.